What is often overlooked and ignored by scholars and authors who have written on the topics of Bardash and Two Spirit is that males referred to Bardash were most often conquered prisoners of war that were forced to serve as male prostitutes. In The Politics of Bardash, Warfare, Homosexuality, and Gender Status, Ramon Gutierrez painstakingly combs through source documents referring to Bardash and summarizes of their plight, quote, humiliated, raped, and abused for others to establish their power and dominance over, the Bardash were far from people who decided to live and love freely. Gutierrez declared that when facts are misinterpreted, we perpetuate all the Bardash that once existed, yet another level of humiliation while shrouding their enslavement and rape. The term Bardash was used well into the 20th century by anthropologists and other mostly non-native scholars, sweeping all of the various possibilities of what that term could have meant into one catch-all term, which was then used interchangeably for all of them. Understandably, the term Bardash, when applied to contemporary Native people and their sexualities, is considered by many to be offensive, inaccurate, and outdated. Another related issue was the fact that Indigenous peoples often felt alienated by English terms used to describe their sexuality, such as homosexual, lesbian, or gay. Many Indigenous people felt a desire to reject language and terminology of the colonizers, and that it was important to distinguish that pre-colonial Indigenous societies had their own viewpoints, traditions, names, and cultural relativity for gender roles outside the Western convention of gender. It is with no surprise that a term eventually came to replace the use of Bardash. Depending on who you ask and what source you research, you are apt to find very different tellings of the origin story of the term Two-Spirit. Most academic and pop ed sources retell a similar story. Websites and sources created by Native American organizations, activists, and news media follow the same storyline. Author of The Politics of the Bardash, Warfare, Homosexuality, and Gender Status, Ramon Gutierrez criticizes two white anthropologists, Bill Roscoe and Walter Williams, who wrote extensively on and popularized both the terms Bardash and Two-Spirit within queer studies. Gutierrez says that Roscoe and Williams, quote, celebrated the Bardash and put them in the category of New Age wisdom. This kind of New Age mysticism in a world that heralded the importance of pre-modern ways as a way to return back to nature and essentially as a time and space that was unfettered by homophobic culture. Gutierrez says Roscoe and Walters profoundly distorted the history of the Bardash. He says that what we mainly know about the history of the Bardash has them actually located in worlds of masculine power, in fields of warfare, of slavery, and of exploitation, and not in worlds of egalitarian possibilities and of gender harmony and mutuality. Quote, the lives of the Bardash were lives of humiliation, endless work, and they were not lives of celebration or veneration. He goes on to say, as for gay liberationists who seek a less rigid gender hierarchy in which to grow and prosper, the Bardash status as a gender representation of power rooted in war is not the place to find it. When facts are misinterpreted with the goal of finding gay models of liberation where they do not exist, we perpetuate on all the Bardash that once existed yet another level of humiliation while shrouding their enslavement and rape, their pimping, and their pandering in romantic webs of obfuscation. Since 2010 or earlier, there has been a move to queer the analytics of queer settler colonialism and create a two-spirit critique as part of the general field of queer studies. However, much of this academic analysis and publishing is not based in traditional Indigenous knowledge, but it is the mainstream non-Native perspective of the broader LGBT community. Despite the fact that some Native people identify with the term Two-Spirit and find it an empowering term, its use as a catch-all is without a doubt leading to serious misunderstandings of the endless nuances of Native nations under the umbrella of this single term. Two-Spirit was meant to replace Western constructs of Bardash and gay, but now the term is being used interchangeably with the term transgender and gender identity, yet more colonially imposed terms. Most dangerously, the term Two-Spirit is being institutionalized to help sell the lie of gender identity and to medicalize Indigenous youth.